Welcome back to Grinning Goats, Lightforge podcasts, the Voyage to the Sunken City arena card valuation stream.
Hello, this is Merps. Okay. See, we have a lot to go, but it's gonna get faster. It definitely will get faster. I'm gonna talk less. I'm just gonna talk less.
Okay, because we average 20 minutes per card, and there's 135 cards. So I don't know how to do the math on that.
The average
it feels like a 24-hour stream is upcoming.
No, it's not great right now, but it's gonna get a lot faster. Okay, talk about the first card. Go.
All right. So we're now in the zone of good cards. These are the B tier cards. They're really good. Like B tier cards back in the day there were no B tier cards. Like in neutral. Like it got up to C, and that was it back in the day. Like Yeti was between C and D plus. There were some cards that were C that was neutral. There weren't even C plus cards. Like I went back because we got some of the old sets coming in with like Old Gods and TGT, and I was like, how are these cards? So I went back. North Sea Kraken used to dominate the meta. It's still draftable now, in case you're wondering. It's like a C though. Corrupted Seer was a good card. It's like a C now. So that those were the cards that were better than the Yeti back in the day. Now, so B tier cards are quite good, but nowadays they're kind of just like your bread and butter good cards. The line of what the average card in your deck is probably between C plus and B. So all of these cards are cards you want to have in your deck. They are at least a little bit better than the rest of your deck. And we're going to start off with the B plus. So these are the best of the B tier cards. The first one is Slimescale Diver. Common, 3 mana, 2/4, dormant for 1 turn, rush, poisonous, Murloc. Go.
Alright, well, you changed the rating on the thing. So, let's compare this to a giant wasp, right? It's similar in some ways because both of them are poisonous. Both of them are probably going to use to deal with the board instead of going face. This thing is more resistant, right? If you just look at it, you're like, wait, it's got 2 health. It can't be killed. Yes, it doesn't have perma-stealth, but it's also got more health to make up for the fact.
That's a big difference. That's double the amount of health on turn 3. Or turn 4, I guess, is when it can attack.
Yep, a wasp dies to quite a few things. Whenever you drop a wasp, I think... if you guys play Arena, like, I never feel confident that it's going to survive to the next turn. Like, I hope it does. I expect that it will sometimes, especially if I have a read on their hand. But I'd never feel comfortable with it. And is this a better Wasp? Yes.
This is a much better Wasp. Wasp isn't even the B tier card.
Yeah. How good is Wasp right now? I'm like, it's maybe Yeti level. It's around there.
Yeah, it's better than Yeti, but it's not much better than Yeti.
It's right there in my eyes. It's like right there. So being better than Yeti, we put this as a B plus. It's like this is significantly better than a Wasp, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine for this meta. So that's kind of where we're at. Once again, when we're talking about these divers, the dormant for 1 turn with the rush, let's not put all of them in the same pile.
That is a big thing. Like, and I see people put them all in one pile like so often. Like Pelican Diver is not the Slimescale Diver, and the Slimescale Diver is not the Gangplank Diver. The Gangplank Diver needs to be banned. The Slimescale Diver is fine. It's just a really good neutral card. Like, you're gonna have good neutral cards. It's not even like it's Night Captain, right? Like, Night Captain is fine. You draw the line somewhere. That's the line to draw. Slimescale Diver is gonna be okay. Like, we will all be okay with this card. We'll learn to live with it, and it will not win that many games for anybody.
Yep. So that's fine. Next card.
Okay. Slimescale Diver. One more thing I want to mention about Slimescale Diver is, imagine like you're trying to use it and your opponent plays like a 3/4, which is one of the best scenarios for Slimescale Diver. The next turn it pops up, it rushes, you kill the 3/4. You're still just left with the 2/1 body, so it gets pinged off. It gets like kind of ancillarily destroyed with some decently high probability. So I know some people are looking at it like, oh my god, it's going to kill my 3-drop and my 4-drop. And that will happen sometimes, and you will lose the game. But not that often. Like, if you can't ping down a Slimescale Diver, this is not, like, you were not going to win this anyway. You were going to be behind.
Okay.
Okay. So next, this is not the only B+ card. There are 2 more B+ cards. One of them is legendary. We're just going to do legendary in with these now.
There's no difference now.
There's still a difference, but Smothering Starfish is the next B+ card. We're also not going in like order of how many points they have or anything. Everything in a tier we view as pretty similarly because our math is not that like super tight because there's no algorithm doing it. It's just like Excel spreadsheet. Okay, Smothering Starfish is an epic neutral. 3 mana, 2/4 beast, battlecry, silence all other minions. A silence that is not giving up that many stats. If you remember, there was already a silence back in, I think, United in Stormwind. It was tradable. It was 4 mana, 3/4 silence.
Librarian.
Librarian, yep. So this is like Librarian, only you get 1 extra stat for its mana cost. It's a 2/4 for 3 and not a 3/4 for 4. And you silence all the minions, including your own, which can sometimes be bad. Like, silence all minions is not that big of an improvement over silence 1 minion, because it's really hard to control. We've seen this before. We've had these effects before in the game of silence all minions. It is not easy to like make it so that it's strictly beneficial to you and that you're silencing in a meaningful way more than one of your opponent's minions.
I think the important thing about this is, if you guys have used Owl recently, Owl is not the trashiest card. That's what I'll say about it. And if Owl is not the most trash card, this can certainly be pretty decent. As in, it's gaining stats on Owl, like 3 stats. It effectively has like double the stats of Ironbeak Owl. And silence is just good now. You can always sort of find a use for it, even tricky ways. Like these days, I find that I'll do like a flip and then a silence, right? I'll just do all these weird things. Silence, I think, is something that I probably underrated for a while. I continue to underrate, and this is just decent. Do you want to play it turn 3? Probably not. Like,
no,
not,
I think you could play it turn 3.
You could
because there's so many weird stuff
points,
now.
Right? It gets some points for being able to be played on turn 3 sometimes. But yeah, I think silence is just really good now. And you hit that like, you hit the silence value a decent amount. Now, it's not sort of higher for I think a good reason, but personally, just thinking of like my own evaluations, I think I just hated on silence for a little bit too long. Like, there was a period of time years ago where I think I appropriately hated on silence, and then it got to a point where I was like, no, I'm hating on this too much. Like, I'm losing value from hating on silence for this long.
But there's just not a lot of silences. Like, Librarian is the only silence that's worth a damn in the arena, and Stormwind just hasn't been in the meta. So you got an Owl? Like, Owl is still just 3 mana for a silence. Smothering Starfish, I think, is quite often going to be your 3-drop. Because quite often, your opponents will play something with a death rattle or an ability that you want to stop immediately. Like, think about like Corporal even. Like, I don't just mean Divine Shields and like death rattles that generate tempo. If your opponent has a Corporal and you play a regular 3-drop, you're taking a risk that he doesn't trigger his honorable kill somehow. But if you play the Starfish, yeah, you're not matching up the best, but you've shut down his potential like 25% chance to win the game. And depending on what the rest of your deck is, it's not a terrible option. And all of this kind of comes together, right, with Smothering Starfish and why it has this stat. Librarian, by the way, which we might have underrated a little bit, but it was a C+. And I don't think we underrated it. I think Starfish is just that much better because it has that one extra stat, and it is silencing all other minions, which sometimes comes into play, but a lot of times silencing all other minions comes into play with taunts, where if they have 2 taunts, you can still win.
I think the most important thing I learned from Librarian was I was wrong to trade it the amount of times that I traded it. I think that from the beginning of that meta, I think I traded Librarian a little bit too much, and I was like, wait, I need this now. Like I would trade it, I'm like, oh wow, the next turn I could use something like that. I really need it, and I think that's what really made me rethink my stance on silence, right? Because it forces me to think. It's like, oh shit, I actually just traded that, but now I need it, and then made me realize how good silences are. And silences, I would say, after everything turns to the next rotation, are just going to be better. The silence effect is just always better and better.
Yep.
Like you said, you have so many 1-drops and 2-drops and 3-drops now that have persistent abilities or death rattles. So this even works on curve sometimes. And then, of course, you can think of the big hit, right? Like the paladin or the priest that goes all in on a minion, and then you feel great, you silence it, you take away a huge card and 8 mana's worth of stats. That feels great. But no, a lot of times it's for example, how good is a 3-mana 2/4 that essentially says deal 3 damage, right? Or -2/2 on something. That's extraordinarily good. That would even be better than this score that we have right here. And you'll get that a decent amount.
Yep. All right. That's Smothering Starfish. Next up, another B+ tier card. This one is a legendary. It is the first legendary that we are looking at, and it is Sir Finley Sea Guide. Something about the legendaries in this set, they're just kind of the neutral legendaries, they're not that good. They make up for it on the class legendaries, but the neutral legendaries are really not that good. There's no Ibis coming in. There's no, Dragon Queen Anexia. This is actually the best legendary card. We'll spoil it for you right here. All the other legendaries we have rated worse. We're going to talk about most of them because they're mostly Bs. But this is a B+ card, and it is Sir Finley Sea Guide, 1 mana, 1/3 Murloc legendary, Battlecry. Swap your hand with the bottom of your deck.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Oh, go for it.
You probably don't want to play this on 1. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do because your hand is crud, right? If you have this, but typically you won't want this in the mulligan. Now, it's not an amazing card as well, and I will say I considered, because right now it's a B+. I was like, maybe it's a B. Here's the good thing about this card. First of all, you don't get that many dredges in your deck, so it's not like you have so many opportunities to bring something up. There are a decent amount of cards that put stuff on the bottom of your deck, but you want to think of this as a later game hand improvement / refresh card, and for that it could be quite good. As in, some of these cards that you're putting on the bottom of your deck are so freaking game-winningly good that sort of replacing that is very, very helpful. So the use of this card is really later on in the game, you swap it to improve whatever the rest of your hand is that you play the good cards, and then the cards that you're just right? Yep. Like the Yetis and the whatever, you're going to improve them, and you're going to improve every single card by a decent amount. And then if you put anything at the bottom of your deck, by the way, anything that puts something at the bottom of your deck, that card is really good. On average, it's like a A+ card or something like that. It's just insanely stupid. So that's where this comes in.
By the way, that is mathematically, I actually did the math, that is mathematically very close to the average of the card they put on the bottom of your deck. It is around an A+.
It's around an A+. Anytime you're putting something at the bottom of your deck from one of these cards, it's just insanely good. And remember, you don't have too many ways to do that sort of effect. Like, if you were just playing with Sunken City cards, and you were able to draft the neutral 2-drop and 4-drop that dredges, great. I think a lot of people are overestimating how many of those they'll have. And then because of that,
On the
this
neutral side,
effect,
you'll have one on average per deck if
yeah.
you draft like based on value.
So a
Neutral
hand
ones.
refresh, right? A hand refresh a little bit later on, and it doesn't have to be like super at the end of like it doesn't have to be like a turn 11 kind of thing. Um, you can do it like if ever your hand gets to be not great, not satisfactory. You don't think you're winning with this hand, do this. Even if you didn't insert something at the bottom of your deck, suddenly on average your hand has gotten a ton better, right? Like because your hand was probably just not helpful before, now it's a lot better. And then if you put anything at the bottom of your deck, you probably just have a game winning card in your hand now. So that's where the value of this is from. It is awkward.
Yeah.
It is not a consistent card, but the sort of pop off potential with this is insanely high as well.
Yeah, I think the key here is you're going to have crap cards. And when you have crap cards, what you generally do, like if you have a 3-mana 3/3, you generally don't play them. Like, unless you have to, right? Unless you just have 3 mana that you need to fill out, unless you have no 3-drop, you just stay in your hand, even if they're not super high mana. And at some point, you play Sir Finley and you upgrade them into normal cards in your hand. This is also a great way to upgrade stuff. Remember, like Ram Commander is going to be in the whatever stuff, the blacksmith thing that gives you like +2 health stuff. Just any kind of tokens that end up in your hand. There's going to be these piranha tokens that come. That's a big shaman mechanic now. All those tokens, all of it, just become real cards when you do the swap too. There are so many like synergy things that you don't even think of that you can do with this card. But even without the synergy things, the deck refresh is huge. Hey, do you really need to deal 4 damage for I don't know what reason you can need to deal 4 damage, and you don't have initiative? Sir Finley's just 1 mana, and you may get your initiative, and then you've solved your problem, and you've gone from definitely losing the game to, oh, maybe 50-50. Like, these are huge swings. And Sir Finley will do all of that. Not, at a 100% rate, but it'll give you a good chance for it. It's actually a very powerful ability.
Yeah, the ability is really powerful. Now, I think a lot of you guys have heard us being like, oh, something that can't be played, especially a turn 1 card, it's like, that's not good. You got to take away points for that. And yeah, I totally agree with you. Like that philosophy is not lost on us. This is not something you want to really keep or play on 1. But man, the effect is so good. Like so freaking good. And
you by the way, Merps keeps saying you can't play it on 1. You usually don't play it on 1. You can play it on 1 if, for example, you have the generally defensive deck and you want the coin to turn into a card because you don't have card advantage, or if you have no curve cards in your hand, like play it, get a 2-drop, right? Like there's positive times to play this card on 1.
Yeah. So remember, we're in a meta that is increasingly you just got to make sure you don't lose. This is Sir Finley is a great don't lose card. Don't lose cards are extraordinarily valuable. Look at how valuable something like Ram Commander or a Bunker Sergeant are, and those are like just good examples of don't lose cards, right? And Sir Finley is much better than those, and then plus the opportunity to not only not lose by drawing a removal. It's you chasing the win as well, because you might have put something game winning on the bottom of your deck. It's very important that you're drawing from the bottom of your deck, right? That's just better because you can manipulate the bottom of your deck, and then the top of your deck is like, who knows what's there, and then you draw the rest of it as well. So, pretty good. Like it's one of the few like 1 mana cards like that's actually a drop and can act as a drop that you don't really want to play on 1, but still has a lot of value, and it's just because the effect is really nice.
All right, that's all of our B pluses. Now we're down to Bs. These are your normal good cards, better than the average card in your deck, but not by that much. This is your good card category, the body of it. And the first one here is Click Clocker. 1 mana, 1/1 mech. Common, neutral, divine shield, Battlecry, give a random mech in your hand +1/+1. So Argent Squire and your little Murlocs and all the 1/1s that generate another 1/1 on Death Rattles or 1/1 Divine Shields, it got power creeped here. This one's not only a mech, which we've seen before that there's a tag, but also has a ability that is just a strict positive. You don't need it, can work on turn 1 when you play it. Give a random mech in your hand +1/+1. There's some mechs in the meta. This is not a no mech meta, and this set especially has added a bunch of mechs into it, and some of the mechs are decent and will make it into your decks. So I think this will trigger more often than people may think.
Yeah, it's quite good. I think solid B tier card.
Yep. And even if it doesn't trigger, remember, it's still an Argent Squire, and Argent Squires have gotten better and better almost every single expansion.
Argent Squire is significantly better than a Yeti now.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
it used to be worse. So. It used to be significantly worse than a Yeti, like 5 years ago, and now it's significantly better. Next up, Pelican Diver, another 1-mana card that is B tier. So I know we were talking about like, oh, Pelican Diver is not what is that? Slimescale Diver is not Gangplank Diver, but Pelican Diver is still good. It's just not close to being problematic, right? It's just a normal good card. 1 mana, delay damage, and the damage is 4 instead of like, let's say Holy Smites 3, which is a very good card, or like Arcane Shots 2. Or not even Arcane Shot. The more what's the 1 mana 2/1 neutral rush?
What?
I forget the core card. 1 mana 2/1 neutral rush. Sky Talon. Thank you. Yeah. So that's quite an improvement on Sky Talon for a one turn delay.
Now here's what Blizzard did. They looked at Gangplank Diver and said, we're just going to make the other 2 divers counter Gangplank Diver. That's because both of these are actually counters to Gangplank Diver. If they play Gangplank Diver first, you play either of the other divers, which are cheaper, by the way. They are cheaper. You play either of those, you can kill the Gangplank Diver. There you go. Problem solved. Just keep Pelican Diver and Slimescale Diver in your hand, wait for them to play the Gangplank, and then play this. What ban? Huh? There you go. It's solved. But yeah, this is fine. The fact that it only has stealth for a turn kind of hurts. Mm-hmm. But once again, what are they going to do, right? And if they do kill off, your 1 mana card, fine, that happens. Your Worgen dies a good amount of times to, nothing really. And I think you're okay with it. This is certainly better than that. Solid B card.
Mm-hmm. Next up is Vicious Slithersphere, another 1 mana card. This one's rare. You see a lot of good 1-drops coming in with this set. You're going to see the same on the class card section. A lot of 1 mana cards in this set. This one is a 1 mana 1/3 Naga. After you cast a spell, gain +1 attack until your next turn. So it's like an old unnerfed mana worm, but it's not permanent. But it's not just for this turn. It's until your next turn. So you still get the extra attack on your opponent's turn if this thing's not dead yet.
Yeah, it's not bad. Once again, very solid. The tag is worth something. The effect is worth something. Nice B-rated card.
Mm-hmm. And just like Argent Squires, 1/3s are just getting better and better.
Yep.
All right. Next one is Crush Claw Enforcer. Crush Claw Enforcer is another rare card, neutral, 3 mana, 3/4 Naga. Battlecry. If you cast a spell while holding this, draw a Naga. This is the first of our Naga synergy cards.
Pretty good. Look, Coin obviously works with this. Other spells work with it, but drawing a Naga, which you probably will have another one in the deck. I'm not going to say if it's going to be amazing like School Teacher, but that's just nice. That's a nice bonus. It's not too hard to trigger this. Now, will you play it sometimes on turn 3 without it? Sure. But yeah, like remember normally a 3 mana 3/4 is like a D plus. So we have like more than a tier's worth of improvement. And I think that's fair for a fairly easy trigger on a pretty good reward.
Yep. This is, I think, a very well-designed card for this kind of synergy, and this is what I mean. Like, these are normally cards that you wouldn't think about too much as Arena. It would just be like a 3 mana 3/4 that like doesn't do much, and once every like 10 games it'll do something, and you're like, haha, I got an extra card. This is going to trigger quite frequently. And this whole Naga mechanic is going to function in Arena. I don't know what it's doing constructed, but it's going to at least exist in Arena, and you have to think about it.
Next
up is Baba Naga. Baba Naga is a common. It is a 4 mana 4/4 Naga. It is one of the first Naga cards that we've seen back when the reveals happened. And its battle cry is, if you cast a spell while holding this, deal 3 damage. So if you cast a spell at some point, including using the coin, with all this is in your hand, it is 4 mana 4/4, deal 3 damage.
Here's the thing about this card. You are giving up a stat. Now, you have the Naga tag and everything, but 4 mana 4/4 is just not a great stat line. At least for the previous card that we reviewed. And remember, we reviewed them the same. You're getting the stats that you should get. 3 mana for a 3/4. Here's 4 mana for a 4/4. I don't know how many spells you guys are expecting to get. Some classes definitely have more than others. Remember, this is just kind of an average score. It's like a B. This card can definitely get pretty awkward. Now, if it's always a 4 mana 4/4 deal 3, that's amazing, right? Like, but think of it this way. Because I see some people being like, oh, I think it should be higher. Knight Captain is a B plus.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this is better than a Knight Captain? I don't think so.
No way.
I definitely don't think so.
No way. Yeah, and also even with the coin, you gotta think, like, if you're coining out a 2-drop or a 3-drop, it's like a good amount of chance, even if you get the Baba Naga by 4, you don't have it yet when you use the coin. And you're not gonna hold the coins just in case you draw a Baba Naga, even if it's in your deck. So the fact that this can't stand alone as a 4-drop really hurts it. And this is the same thing with Knight Captain, for that matter. I think a lot of people just don't appreciate the fact that some of these cards, even though you can play it on curve quite a decent amount of times, you can't play on curve anywhere near all the time, and that really hurts it. Like, that's one of the big reasons why Knight Captain is not a 6/6 that deals 3 damage. It has all that honorable kill, blah, 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 blah stuff, because that's what makes it balanced.
Remember, guys, a B rating. So I think some people forget this as well. Once again, people who are really into the number 9.4, those sort of people want to put everything that includes Knight Captain and above into like one bucket, as in everything is like a 5, for example. We definitely try to differentiate like the actual game-breaking cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Raid Boss Onyxia. How much better is Raid Boss Onyxia than a Knight Captain? Much better.
More than 1 tier better.
Much better. More than 1 tier better. How much better is even like Arbor Up, right? Over something like a Knight Captain. I understand it depends on the meta, but like, yeah, I think if you look at something like Arbor Up, you're like, yeah, that is a lot better, right? That just is a lot better. And it's important. So remember, your average card in your deck is going to be worse than Baba Naga. I don't know if that helps you guys or not, but your average for the deck will not be a B.
Also, this is just a very good neutral set compared to the previous sets that have come out. So I think people may also think like, oh, you had a top 5. Those are the good cards. These are like the whatever cards. But I think this card is good. There were 6 non-legendary cards we put in the B category for Alterac. There's 9 here. in non-legendaries.
Right.
So it's just a better set. Like in Alteric, there was like one S and one A, I think. In Sunken City, as you've seen, there's five A's. Like there's just more of these good cards that are coming out, and it doesn't make these cards any worse. It's just there's a bunch of cards that need to be banned, or they're like pushing the envelope. If they don't get banned, they are pushing the envelope for what neutrals can do.
Yep. So once again, like I hate to keep reminding people of this scale, because like I think more people do that scale, right? They're like, oh, this is broken, that's broken. I think we like to differentiate between the stuff that is actually broken versus not broken. So like I think United and Stormwind was a good example. We were talking about how like that wasn't amazing, right? I think a lot of people would agree with that. Mm-hmm. United and Stormwind, 0 S cards in neutral. I'm not going to talk about legendaries. 1 A card, that's Battleground Battlemaster, and then 1 B plus card, the Traveling Merchant. That's it. So once again, we're talking about that sort of a scale. Yeah. Now, if you're saying that, like, I fundamentally disagree with your scale in some, like, way, okay, that's fine. But if we are to use this scale, you guys got to understand sort of like where it stands. So I see a lot of comments that are just like, oh man, Knight Captain is way higher than a B plus.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? So then where are you putting something like Arbor up? Where are you putting something like Caverns, right? You're like, oh, Knight Captain is S tier. Okay, we have to understand that there are cards much better than Knight Captain, right? Like that.
Knight Captain is not as good as Mothership.
Yeah, I think Mothership is like a better. Now, like, do I think they're that different? No, I don't.
I mean, yeah.
I think Mothership is a little bit better.
I think Mothership plus card versus an A. It's not like a huge difference, but it's there. All right.
And if you want to argue, if you want to argue they're about the same, yeah, the score, like it's a B plus versus an A, right? So you're actually not that far. Do I think that Mothership is better? Yeah, I do. This is why like we have the score that we do. But once again, another reminder, because I see a lot of people being like B plus is way too low, and it's like, no, well, B plus is just really good already. And if you
Baba Naga's a B, by the way.
Yeah. Like, but I'm saying a B still is quite good, right? Like a B is quite good. I think a lot of people look at a B and maybe everybody has Asian parents or something, and then a B essentially equals an F. But I think also people just have this habit of wanting to put everything as like, oh, this is like S tier, right? Like,
but that means Blizzard's doing its job, right? Blizzard should make you feel like all the cards in your deck are better than average, because that feels better than if actually half the cards in your deck are better than average and half are below average. We're just no reality
so this
in
is,
here.
This is the thing. It's like, then on your, for like those sorts of people on your scale, I don't know, do you have like a quadruple S? Do you have like a quadruple S plus?
We don't have, we have S and then S plus. For the first time, we're going to have cards that are actually above S plus. Like that if there was a, let's say, XS tier, it would be XS tier rather than S plus.
Yep.
We just refuse to go there because it doesn't matter at that point.
So anyways, this is another thing, because I understand people here, it's like, oh, Knight Captain is a B plus, and they're like, oh, it's way better. When you say better is relative, right? If you're just saying Knight Captain is very good, yeah, I agree with you. That's why it's a B plus. That B plus is where a lot of really good cards reside, and then there are cards that are better, right? Like Scorpid, for example, is better.
Hey, so moving on, we are going to our next B tier card, which is Excavation Specialist. It is a neutral common, 4 mana, 3/6, Battlecry Dredge. Reduce its cost by 1. So Dredge is the mechanic where you take a look at the 3 cards at the bottom of your deck, and you take one of them and you put it on the top of your deck. That's what Dredge is. It is Scry from MTG, but from the bottom instead of from the top. You don't draw the card at the end of it, you just put it up there. There are synergies to this. There's a lot of stuff in this set that puts really, really ridiculously good cards at the bottom of your deck. So then you dredge it up, and then you get like a super premium card, right? Rather than what we had before, which is you just shuffle it into your deck, and then you don't know when you're getting it. Here for dredge, for things that are meant to synergize with dredge, you know you're never getting to that card unless you dredge it up. But even if you don't have that synergy in your deck, or having put anything down there, dredge also just functions as a scry for the MTG folks, or tracking, right? But without the discarding part. And so it is a very powerful ability. And this is a card that does not give any stats up, 3/6, pretty much a Yeti, and it has a bonus dredge, and that dredge has its cost reduced by 1 mana. Now, you can't use that at this turn, because remember, dredge does not actually draw the card. This is not a super ridiculous card, Excavation Specialist. It just puts the card on top of your deck, and it has that 1 mana discount that you can use on the next turn.
Good. Look, you get the stats that you get. So, all right, look, you get Yeti stats, right? A Yeti is low C/D plus tier.
It's D plus tier.
Yeah.
But yes, it's right on the line.
So you're getting a good 2 tiers from this. Mm-hmm. So if you guys are curious where how much better is this than a Yeti? 2 tiers better. Now, I think people also overrate exactly how many good cards they're putting at the bottom of their deck. Once again, you're not just playing with Sunken City. Now, even if you don't have that, is it good? Yeah, you reduce the cost by 1. It's nice. It's cool. You're not putting that many OP cards in the bottom of your deck. You just aren't. All right, get that out of your head. All of you guys are in fantasy land thinking oh man, I'm going to put all the colossal minions on the bottom of my deck. All of them. Literally all of them. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry, guys. So, once again, it's relative. Yeti is 2 tiers below this. 2 entire tiers below this. 2 entire
tiers, 1.5 tiers.
Almost 2 entire tiers below this. I think that's appropriate for this one.
Yeah, Excavation Specialist is really good. And the other dredge card is really good as well. There's just not a lot of dredge cards outside of class cards, and only certain classes dredge. But the overall mechanic of dredging is very useful, just normally in gameplay. And that synergy is game winning. And I think the synergy is going to trigger more often than people think, because it's any time that you stick a card on the bottom of your deck, that card's not moving. It could be 6 turns later. If at that point you draw the dredge card and you dredge it up, you're all right, I'm winning the turn after that when I finally draw that card and can play it out. Because the stuff you put on the bottom of your deck is insane. They're all A+ and more cards. So this card is not going to do it's not a B tier card by itself. It comes really close to it, but if you actually put something to dredge in there, and if any part of your deck has that ability, there's some decent chance that you'll play it before the dredge card. You're gonna get it, and that'll be your win condition, or one of
Another good way to think about these cards is for some reason, when people look at this dredge and also the 2-drop dredge, they tend to assign they tend to reward these dredge cards and be oh, this is where I'm getting the value at. So what happens there? Because when I see those same people rate the cards that are putting the stuff on the bottom of the deck, they're oh, this is amazing. And then they look at this oh, that's amazing. I'm no. For the amazingness, first of all, you have to subtract it, because you have to have these 2 steps. So you actually have to subtract it, and then you have to divide that somewhat. But I see what people do is it is 10 mega units of amazing, and then I'm going to assign that 10 mega units of amazing to both the dredge card and the card that puts the thing on the bottom of their deck, and it's just amazing. Everything's amazing. Whereas if you actually want to score it, that 10 amazing units, you have to divide, cut a portion, tax a portion of that out, because you need both of these cards effectively. And then let's say it goes from 10 to 8 or whatever, and then you assign 4 and 4 to each card, something like that. You don't have to assign them equally, but you have to do something like that. So it actually goes from 10 on each card to just 4 on each card.
So it goes from a total of 20 to 8. 8 being the correct number between the 2 cards.
Yes.
It's true. Like I don't know. Maybe people think this card's amazing. It's not gonna be super amazing. It's gonna be a good card though. You're gonna draft it more often than not. There's not a lot of like he's a good card in your deck, right? It's better than your average card.
And of course, dredge is worth more than putting something at the bottom. Like if we were to assign, it wouldn't be 4-4. Like because you drawing something, even if you draw something,
you're talking about that part of dredge, not the entire. Because most of the value of dredge is not from the combo. Most of the value of dredge is just from the tracking effect.
Yeah. So it's fine. It's good. I think this is fair. I think some people will look at it and be like, "Oh, B is too high," and some people will be like, "B is too low." I don't know.
All right. Next one. This is our last non-legendary card in the B category. It is Selfish Shellfish. 4 mana 7/7. Not a 5 mana 8/8, but a 4 mana 7/7 beast. Death Rattle. Your opponent draws 2 cards.
How is this a beast?
I mean, shellfish. They're fish. They're living things. There's no shellfish tag, so they're a beast.
I guess.
Beasts aren't all mammals, you know. They could be birds, they could be fish, they could be whatever this is. It looks super evil, by the way. So, okay. When this card first came out, there were immediately people who were like, ADWCTA, this card's ridiculous. Like, this is the card needs to be banned. And I'm like, okay, so you are living in the world of 5 years ago. When having, I don't know, how much more tempo stats is this? 5 more tempo stats than a Yeti. Which is a lot, because the Yeti only has 9 stats altogether. Like, was game winning. Like, half the time, if not more. These days, it's not game winning. Like, more than 5% of the time. It just helps a little. And the downside of giving your opponent 2 cards, that still matters. And that's definitely going to trigger. This card is going to die at some point, especially if you play it on curve. So it's a B. It's still a good card. You're not going to get a 4 mana 7/7 tempo when the Death Rattle only gives your opponent card advantage without it being a good card. But this is not a game-winning card. It's like Bittertide Hydra these days is barely like draftable. Because it just kills you.
Oh, yeah. Bittertide Hydra sucks. Today.
Yeah.
Now, this is not Bittertide Hydra. It's funny because I actually see this comment. It's like, oh, this is Bittertide Hydra all over again.
Bittertide Hydra has actual negative
Bittertide
effects.
Hydra.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a B. Bittertide Hydra these days is like a F plus.
I don't know, D. Bittertide Hydra's downside is way too bad these days. Health has become so much more important. Also, there's just too many ways to ping Bittertide. Bittertide is one that it's like a never draft right now, right? It's actually a never draft. This is interesting because if you just look at chat right now, for example, there's people on both sides being like way too high, way too low, and I like where this is at. The important thing about this is that don't think of the worst case scenario, don't think of the best case scenario. But if you drop this on 4, here's also the thing. This gets much worse later on in the game. Because later on in the game, the expectations for what you can do with like 8, 9, 10 mana are quite high. So a 4 mana 7/7 isn't even that great nowadays. But on turn 4, the game is still fairly limited. You drop this on turn 4, you will win with this card a good amount if you drop it on turn 4. Later on, this can really become a liability. Like, this can become a liability. Now, the drawback, your opponent drawing 2 cards, it's not as bad as it used to be as well, because drawing cards is very available. Card generation, card draw isn't like the premium it once was, so that's something good about it. But I think this is exactly where it is. It'll win you the game sometimes. Other times it'll be very awkward, or perhaps even not lose you the game, but certainly not help you, right? It'll just be a bad-ish card. Just like how if you get Corporal and you're not in a great position, it's a really bad card, right?
I mean, it's a croc.
It's a croc, which is really, really bad. Like at least this will give you some stats.
Croc is gonna rotate out of
sorry,
as
Croc.
well as Spider Tank, but Yeti has stayed.
Yeah, the persistent Yeti.
Yeti will never move.
So yeah, this card will absolutely win you some games, but not consistently, at all. The thing is, this card is very inconsistent, and part of it comes from the fact that you won't play this on turn 4 a decent amount of times, and if you don't, oh man, now we're getting really, really shaky.
Yep. I see a comment in chat from Hellbait, which is a really good comment. It just play this thing on 4 going first as Hunter can be game winning. And it speaks to the larger picture of you want this card in specific types of decks. You want this card in decks where you are expecting to just have less cards than your opponent anyway. So you're never getting to the point where these cards are actual card advantage. You're just giving your opponent 2 more options. Right, which is still bad. Obviously, is a downside, but it's not as bad as if you're actually fighting for card advantage at the end, like for size of deck at the end of the game. So you want this in fast, aggressive decks. You want this to be hitting face as much as possible if it survives the first turn. Like, not necessarily Hunter, but Hunter would be like one of the best examples.
Yeah, and plus, unless they're sort of cheesing some removal or just getting super value some way. A lot of times, this is going to at least 2 for 1, right? At least. So, really, what are you giving up? You're not really giving up that much. Solid B card.
All right. So that's it for all the B cards of non-legendaries. We're going to end this segment with 3 legendary cards that are all B tier. We talked about Sir Finley earlier on. Now we're going to talk about Ambassador Phelan. If I can find Ambassador Phelan. There we go. Ambassador Phelan is 4 mana, 4/5, so he's a Yeti. Put 3 Colossal Minions on the bottom of your deck. So Colossal Minions, we haven't seen them yet because they're all class minions. Every single class has 1 Colossal Minion. The worst of them is an A. The best of them are above S+. As in, if we actually limited S+ as the top, and we had another tier above that, it would be that other tier. So there has never been a card that's above S+, by the way. Even for something like Raid Boss and Exia, that was just in like an actual S+ card. It's not like a SX card or whatever. It's just S+ is the proper range for it. Some of these cards go to a tier that we don't even have and we're not interested in making, so we just call them S+. And basically at S+, you've seen Onyxia come out. You just win the game. Like, if you don't immediately lose the game the very next turn from some like damage that goes to your face, you just win the game. And that is what those cards are. So putting 3 Colossal Minions on the bottom of your deck ensures that you will get one of those cards, because you're going to, if you ever dredge them up, because you'll get 3 choices of 3 different Colossal Minions. And you'll just pick the ridiculously good one, not the one that's only an A tier. The downside is you do have to actually get a dredge card and play it after this. Otherwise, it's a Yeti.
Right. So if you think of how this works in the rating system, this is a Yeti, right? And then Ambassador Phelan is about a tier and a half, almost 2 tiers higher than the vanilla card. The other card, like the the Excavation Specialist,
yep.
That is also about a tier and a half, almost 2 tiers above. And then you look at the fact that you have to have these 2 together, right? Like, you have to put it on the bottom, and then you have to dredge it back up. So then you have 2 cards which we've basically assigned. It's like, okay, these are like, put them together, and this isn't exactly the way to do it, but if you sort of put them together, you're getting, you need to basically get something approximately 3 to 4 tiers better than, just like an average card. And yeah, that's kind of what you're getting. Like, that's how good these cards are. If you're drawing a Colossal Minion from the bottom of your deck, as in, okay, you play Ambassador Phelan, you don't die. You play the Excavation Specialist. Once again, you don't die. You're able to play the Colossal Minion. Once again, you don't die. You win.
There's one Colossal Minion that prevents you from dying, and a couple of other ones also have taunts. So
yeah.
It's a little easier to not die after you play the Colossal Minion.
So, I certainly didn't calculate it out like that, but that is one way in which, if you just sort of do the math, it also works out. So I think some people will look at this and be like, this is ridiculous. This is amazing. It should be higher than a B. These are combos. These are combos. You got to dredge it. We're not just playing with Sunken City here. I think this is more than fair for something like this, but we also do recognize colossal minions, especially if you put 3 of them. It's stupidly good. Yes.
Like for this, you also have to think, because on average you have 1 dredge card in your deck that is neutral. So if you're one of those neutral classes without the extra class dredge cards, what if you draw one of those dredge cards and you have Ambassador Phelan in your deck? What do? Do you not play the dredge card and just hope you draw the Ambassador Phelan at some point so that you can win the game? Or do you play it because you need a curve card or just a card that does something? You're in kind of a tough spot. And that's the problem with Ambassador Phelan. It doesn't do stuff. It's just one part of a combo. The absolute ridiculousness of hitting the combo is what makes it have like a tier and a half more value than a Yeti. But if you don't naturally just hit the combo, which will happen, less than half the time, I don't know. Like, are you really going out of your way for it? It probably involves some judgment on how good the rest of your deck is, and how good your opponent's doing, and all this other stuff. But it's a lot of thinking. Like, these are not no-thing cards. Or, I mean, Phelan itself is a no-thing card. You just play it. But the dredge, like, Phelan makes your dredge cards even harder to think about. Like, Arena is getting more thinky with this set, even for these like combo mechanics. All right,
it's thinky, but it's kind of like short stack poker.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's all
it's thinky. This isn't like this isn't sort of like small stakes pot limit poker or just like limit poker, right? Yeah, this isn't limit poker. This is like short stack. Is there a strategy? Yes, very much so. Like short stack poker is very, very skillful, but it's different. It's different.
All right. Next up, another B tier legendary, Blademaster Okani. Blademaster Okani is a 4-mana 2/6 battlecry. Secretly choose to counter the next minion or spell your opponent plays while this is alive. If your opponent plays this out, you can kill it, and then it won't counter anything. But if you can't kill it, and you gotta play something, you gotta choose whether it's a spell or a minion. And if you choose wrong, it's gonna get countered, and this gets a lot of value. But if you choose correctly, then it's 4-mana 2/6.
Yeah, the fact that it has to survive is not great, but it's fine. Like, I think B is fair. You're going to have some games in which this thing is amazing. You're going to have some games in which it's not so amazing. So if you just compare it with like all of the A tier and S tier cards, I think you'll see kind of the difference between the consistency and then the play around ability of those cards versus this card.
Like, just compare this to Gangplank. This is sometimes a 2-for-1. Sometimes. Whereas Gangplank. Whereas a Gangplank is always a 2-for-1. And sometimes a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6-for-1. Right? That's an A+ card. This is an S card.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, if it was just a battle cry and it didn't have to live, it would be great. It would be so freaking good, actually. But yeah, this thing has to stay alive. It really cuts into it.
Okay, finally, last card is Queen Azshara, which is a 5-mana 5/5 Naga battlecry. If you've cast 3 spells while holding this, choose an ancient relic. And the ancient relics are all really, really good. The one you're going to pick is the Horn of the Ancients, which is 3 mana. Add a random colossal minion to your hand. It costs 1 mana. I'm not going to read the rest of them because you're going to pick the Horn of the Ancients.
Yeah. You're definitely going to pick that one. You never pick the other. You never, ever pick the other ones, basically. But this isn't easy. Because you have to cast 3 spells while holding Queen Azshara. That's really hard, man. But if you have a choice, yeah, you like never play. Like if you're at 2 spells, you don't play this. You wait for the other spell and you do that so you can get the Colossus. It's just not consistent. But at the end of the day, is a 5-mana 5/5 terrible? No, it's not terrible. And then if you're able to proc it, well, congrats, you just got like a 4-mana S tier card.
Mm-hmm. Like, compare this to Ambassador Phelan, right? Ambassador Phelan just requires 1 dredge card to be played at whatever later time, and then you get it. Whereas Queen Azshara requires you to play 3 spells when you have it. Now, you have many more spells in your deck than you have dredge cards, so that balances out a bit. Also, the coin is a spell if you happen to have it at the beginning when you're using the coin, or you just don't use your coin for a while. You also generate a lot of cards that are potentially spells, and you almost never generate dredge cards. So there is a little bit of a balancing, but Phelan is a Yeti, full-on correct amount of stats. Queen Azshara is missing a stat, and the difference is that when you dredge up a Colossus, it is delayed 1 turn, and it still costs the full mana, whereas this one, it becomes a 4-mana.
It's a 4-mana Colossus.
You can literally play it on the turn.
Yeah. We're getting to a point now where average scores for cards are really hard. Like, you know, it started with something, for example, like Glaciate, in which it's like, oh, like how much is it brought up by the lieutenant? It's brought up a lot by the lieutenant, right? Like something like Glaciate, if you hit the lieutenant, it's amazing, and then that huge outlier with a score that high, you know, it shoots it up. For Queen Azshara, how often are you going to proc this? Really low. Like, you have to have this in your hand, and then you have to cast the spells. Sometimes it'll happen. Some classes have a higher chance than others. But how much is it brought up by the fact that if it does proc, you win the game with a super cheap colossal minion? A lot. Like, a lot. Because a 5-mana 5/5 is not worth a lot. Yeah, it's a Naga tag. Is it worth that much? No, Naga tags aren't worth too much. But there's this outside chance, right? There's this outside chance that you get to proc it, or in all of your cases, there is a guarantee that your opponent procs it, and then you are going to be pissed as hell. You're going to be so angry. Because once they satisfy this condition, it goes from like a D plus tier card, or is it like a D? I don't know. To just an absolute broken S plus tier card.
Yep. All right. Well, that's Queen Azshara, and that's all of our B tier cards. We're moving on to the C tier after this. That's all the stuff that's worse than a Yeti. Before we leave, I want to give a shout out again to our patrons at patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you guys so much for all of your support over the years. RV Night Train, Eric L, Yin, REG, Dan F, and Karova. Thank you guys so much. We will see you back here for the less than average cards in your deck, but still, 15 cards are like that, so they're still very useful, and you'll have them in your deck. So,
Bye.
Until then, see you guys.